Hello, welcome back to the Mobile Motorbike Mechanic channel. I'm Steve. Today we're off to Dorwich in the West Midlands to replace the crank position sensor on a Triumph Thunderbird 900. So we'll see you when we get there. Right folks, so here we are with the Triumph Thunderbird. So what we've got is the crank position sensor down here. This is what we believe is faulty. So the symptom on this bike is when it gets warm, the customer's riding along and it will just suddenly cut out. Just poof. Everything electrically is still on and you can press the starter button, just pull the clutch in, press the start button, bike fires straight back up again and he carries on riding. But it's getting gradually worse. Only does it when it's hot, so that's the reason why we think it's the crank position sensor. So we just need to whip this cover off, get the crank position sensor out and put that back together again. Okay, so what we're going to do, to get this one unplugged, we need to find the other end of that plug, which is up under here somewhere. So we'll pop this air cover off. Sorry, air box cover off, that's it. So, being typical Triumph, every single fastener on this is different. So what I mean by that is, for these two we need an Allen key. For this down here there's 8mm bolts. For inside there you need Torx bits. So it's just all different. It's standard for Triumph. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and find the other end of this wire, which should be one of these two plugs here. I believe it's one of those two. It is actually that one there. Okay. Get that released. This is the awkward bit, getting it out from under there. Right, so we've located the plug and the wire. I've got a pair of cutters in my hand because right in the middle of there is a cable tie. And we're not going to take off the airbox and the carbs and everything else just to get to one cable tie. So I'm going to cut that and run it out. Not ideal, but we know we're replacing this component, so we can just chop that wire off and be done with it. Right, now I can get this cover off and get into the guts of it. We've got a little catch pan here, just in case we get any dribbles out of this cover, because there might be a little bit of residue oil in it, but the majority of the oil should have run back into the engine and be in the sump. So we'll get this off. And whenever you do a side cover, just make sure the bolts that you're taking out, you're comparing, because some might be long, some might be short. And so far they're all the same length. Yep, they're all the same length. Yep, so all of those are the same size. Right, side cover, give it a wiggle and jiggle, Right, I'm just going to get a soft mallet and give that a tap. Okay, soft face mallet, so we're not going to mark the case. Nope. Right, so plan B, we've got a normal hammer, but we're not going to hit this with the hammer. We're going to use the wooden handle. So what I want to do, there's a very slight lip on the case here. So what I want to do is I want to get the wooden handle just on that lip. Very carefully, you don't want to go marking any part of the bike. And we're just going to, there we go. And that's got that case. If you can zoom in on that, you can see that that's moving now, ever so slightly. That's all we want to do, is start moving it. There we are. Ta-da! One case off. And as expected, you get a little dribble of oil, but the vast majority of oils run back into the case. So, one gasket coming off in bits, so we'll have to clean all that up, get all that gasket surface nice and flat. We can do that in a minute or two. And the same with this one, I have to get all that gasket off and clean it up. But again, we'll do that in a minute or two. Okay, so this is the crank position sensor here, and as you can see, it's retained by 2 bolts. Now, these bolts are Torx, T-O-R-X bolts. You might grow a Torx bolt and go, or a Torx bit, and think, oh yeah, that fits. Now that's a 25, that fits, but then you get the next one up, 27, well that fits as well. So keep going up, that's a 30, and that fits nice and snugly. So it's important on these types of fasteners, it's really important to make sure you get the right, the correct fitting part. So if we go up from a 30, the next one up is a 40, I think, yep. So the 40 won't fit. So make sure you get the correct fitting part and it's all nice and snug in there. This is what I said about Triumphs being a bit of a pain, because you've got Allen bolts, you've got normal bolts, now you've got Torx fittings. So we'll get these 2 Torx fittings apart. However, before we do that, if you can see these little spikes on this rotor, when this is replaced, we need a distance of 0.6 to 0.8 millimeters between the face. If you can see in there, there's like a little pin actually on the face of this sensor. So between that little pin and this, one of these little spikes, you have to have a distance of 0.6 to 0.8 mil. So we'll measure it with a set of feeler gauges, and that's the new sensor. You see the pin in the middle of that sensor, so it's nice and shiny and easy to see on that one. So when we replace that, between that face and this face, 0.6 to 0.8 mil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just crank the engine round until we get one of these pins level with the middle of this sensor. And once we've done that, then we can take this sensor off, because I'm just going to check the measurement. Right, so I need a big socket and a breaker bar. Okay, so we've now got this pin lined up with the face of this sensor. Okay. It's going to be tight. Oh, you bugger. Oh, that's it. Yeah. Just notice there's a washer on the back of that, and we don't want that dropping down inside the engine. So, oh, there wasn't a washer. I thought there was a washer on that. Yep, no washer on that one either. Cool. And then just need to break the seal on that. Well and truly glued in. Oh, come on, you fucking idiot. There. That's got it. Right. Old sensor removed. New sensor. We're ready to go in. Slightly different design, but it'll fit and it'll go in there. Yep, that's going to work. Cool. Okay. Right, I'm going to clear up all of this horrible gasket. We'll get all that ripped off. Okay, one done, one to go. You just see us go around the edges of the case and the edges of this, this case and the edges of the crankcase with a razor blade, or Stanley knife blade, and a bit of Scotch-Brite. Just want to polish it up as best you can, get all the old gasket off, make sure it's all clean and there's no lumps and bumps. This case is actually quite rough in places, this little cover on the inside, so yeah, it should the new gasket should take out the imperfections, but this square hole where the new sensor lead is going to go pass through, what we're going to have to do is use a bit of high temp sealant on it just to spooge around there and to glue it in the case. You saw how difficult the old one was to get out, so we'll get some of this on here now on this little grommet and we'll glue it in the case. Right. So you don't want a lot, you just want a bit, because the more you put on, the more it's just going to go everywhere. So you want a decent amount, but you don't want to go mad with it. And all you're doing is you're filling up the little valley, the little crack in there. Like I say, there's not a lot on my finger. And then we just fill in up the valley in the middle. And once that's done, like that. Ugh. Itchy bloody nose at the last worst possible moment. You get an itchy nose. So all we're going to do is we're going to squeeze that into the case, and like I say, as you push that in, you can see all of the sealant spooging out. I'm just going to spread it across the back face there, because that's where your gasket's going to push up against. Right, so that's that done, and now we need to mount the actual sensor itself. So, so the sensor goes in. Oh, wrong way around. There we go. That's the sensor in. And gets mounted up like that. Right, we're only going to do these finger tight because you'll notice this sensor can move in and out like that. So this is where we need our feeler gauges. Now I've set that to 0.63, so I've used 2 feeler gauges, 0.63. If you remember, our distance was 0.6 to 0.8 mil, so 0.63, that's the lower end of that. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to slide those 2 feeler gauges in there. Ooh, if we can. Might need to slacken that one off. There we are. Put the feeler gauges in there and just nip up the bolts. And when you pull those out, that's your distance set. So he's in there. And what happens is when you do these up, that sensor might move. So once you've nipped them up, recheck. No, we've still got the right gap. So we'll go for a final nip. Cool. Right. I'm happy with that. So we'll get the gasket on, we'll get the cover on, and then we can get it plugged in. On gasket. Now with this type of gasket, it doesn't have any dowels on it. So we can't put the dowels in the engine case and hold this where it needs to be. So it's sticking on there at the moment. But ideally we want just a little tiny dab. That's it, a little tiny dab. And we're just going to pop that there, just to hold that in place. That is it. You don't want any more. Okay. And then as you can see, all the holes line up. The case is good. So let's get some bolts in. Now, what might happen, where the hell's my 8mm spanner bloody thing on? There is. So what might happen with that is when you put one of the bolts in, the whole thing might twist and move. So go steady, just get it started, that's all you need, and then you can hold it in place whilst you get the next bolt in. And the next bolt you want ideally sort of down there. So you're not doing 2 bolts next to each other, you're doing them across the case. And then that should, he says should, hold that gasket in place. And if you look through the bolt hole, you'll see if you'll see the hole like that, and you'll see if the gasket's moved, and if it's what they call eyelidded. And if it has done that, you might want to reach in there with a small pokey thing and just pull it back so it's nice and lined up. But I can see from that they are all good. So all we're going to do, just a couple of turns on each one, just to get it in place. Because once we've got it in place, then we know we're all good. And we just want to snug it down nice and evenly. Right. All looks good, so we can go for a final nip up on all the bolts. Cool. And you can see there's quite a bit of the instant gasket there that's run out, so we'll just clean that off. Right, throw that away because that's got an instant gasket all over it. Cool. Right, so all that's left to do is plug that one back in again. And we're not going to feed that back through the, what's it called? The cable tie in there. For those of you that are going to moan about me not securing it properly, feel free to moan. It's in there, it's done. It ain't coming out. Right. Airbox cover back on. So let's go for a start. So ignition on, bit of choke, clutch in. All good. Okay, we'll let that warm up. We'll check for leaks. If we've got no leaks, then this one's done. Fingers crossed. Right folks, so we've had this one running for a few minutes now. We've got no leaks on the engine case. We've got no leaks from where the crank position sensor comes out of the crankcase, so that's all spot on. Like I say, it is on the button even though it's hot. So that starts up straight away. So what we'll do is we'll get the customer to give this one a ride off camera, make sure he's happy with it. But as far as we're concerned, this one's done. So remember to like, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you again on the next video.